There are a number of game changers that we can expect will be coming to play in our cities in the next few years. We can already see some of them right now being tested. Automation, automated vehicles clearly is one. There's some that are a little bit beyond the horizon, for which we still have to prepare now. And one example of that might be the use and the large scaled up use of drones for commercial applications. But I think one thing we forget a lot of times when we think about technologies in particular is that often technologies are solutions, but we have to be really clear about what the questions are that we're asking. What are these the answers to? And that's one thing when we think about technology in the city, we have to be clear about what is it that we want for our cities. How do we want the game to be played? The last time we unquestionably accepted a new technology in our cities without asking these questions was when we deployed cars. And it took us 2 generations to claw back what we wanted for the city. And there's a real risk that we don't think about this now and accept a lot of technologies that may help in some cases, but may also create some new kinds of disbenefits without thinking about it adequately ahead of time. I think small cities, large cities, medium cities, they each have their role. In terms of technology innovation, you'll probably see it where there is dysfunction and where technology may be a solution to that dysfunction. Possibly more you find that in large cities. In terms of implementation, I think medium-sized cities, because you have some of the issues that technology may or use cases may seek to solve. But at the same time, you have an easier decision-making process that allows you to quickly address those and quickly implement those solutions and quickly test and determine whether or not you want to scale them up. I think clearly when you are creating the policy or thinking about crafting the policy, there has to be some kind of engagement with citizens and broad engagement, especially with those that don't typically involve themselves in these type of policy discussions. Now the other thing is broad engagement also in the budgetary processes, and we've seen this with participatory budgets in a number of cities around the world. And this is one way of identifying for transport authorities and for city governments what are the issues that people are concerned about, and then specifically what are the budget solutions that can be brought to that in terms of programs that will be funded. When you have citizens directly giving input on how cities can spend money, then that gives a way for people to engage not only in the thinking about transport policy, but in the implementation of transport policy. And the final thing is monitoring what happens afterwards. There has to be an ex-post monitoring process where people can understand what was the impact of the policy, was it what we had expected, what those people had expected when they put it in place, and if not, then what is the recourse that you have to make sure that the course can be changed. Cycling and walking gives us a large degree of access to many opportunities that are within short destinations. In fact, most of our trips are relatively short and could be served through a combination of walking, cycling, and public transport. But there's another reason, and that's a really important reason as well, which is right now we have an epidemic of sedentarization. That people are moving less and less. It's a part of the way in which we have organized work. It's part of the way in which we organize society. But cycling and walking build into our daily lives everyday activity. And when we look at the evidence, as we did at the ITF, we see that when you look at how much cycling people can do and how much walking people can do, in those cities that have invested the most in a cycling-friendly and walking-friendly environment, the health benefits outweigh the cost, including the accident and crash-related costs, by almost 20 to 1. Well, what does it take? Well, I think the first thing it takes is looking beyond the policies that we can put in place to help those that are already cycling to cycle. I don't think, except if you're in a very large cycling population, it makes sense to look at those few people who are cycling now and try to make policies just for them, because typically they're young, typically they're men, typically they would cycle in any conditions. I think the real important thing is to think about what are the policies you can put in place to bring in those people who aren't cycling. People who are afraid to cycle in current conditions. The old, the very young, women, different types of people, different types of immigrant populations. And for that, we can see that there is one fundamental policy, and that is that you have to put in place infrastructure that welcomes them and makes them safer, but more importantly, it makes them feel safe. thinking about how we engage with people as they're getting about, thinking about how we engage with people where they live, and thinking about how we can more formalize the informal technologies and informal transport networks that they already have in place. I think those are three ways rather that we can think about making sure that these large cities continue to function as well as they can, in fact function better than they are today.